All right, so I wanted to make a quick video here on all the different pieces of tools and equipment that you need in order to start your miniature wargaming hobby. So that's just assembly and painting. I wanted to make this video because I literally just started getting into the hobby. I painted my first set of minis here, so I have the Sisters of Battle from Games Workshop's Warhammer 40K. Even after watching many YouTube videos and tutorials and so forth, I spent a lot of time going back and forth between stores to just pick up one item or another item that I missed. And so I wanted to just put everything into one video so that other folks like me who are starting out the hobby can get everything that they need. So I'm going to be splitting up this video into two parts. First is assembly and everything needed to build your models, and second is the actual painting process. So for assembly, first off, obviously you need to buy yourself a box of minis. That's pretty self-explanatory. If you're doing like D&D minis and stuff like that, you can probably skip the assembly step. But for Games Workshop and other wargaming titles, as far as I know, they come out. The minis come out in sprues like this, so they're all little bits and pieces. And so you have to assemble the pieces before you can paint them. So to assemble them, first you need, first of all, the terminology I have might not be exactly right. First, you need a set of clippers to actually cleanly remove the pieces from the sprues. Second, you need some kind of razor or straight edge in order to clean up. They're usually, little bits of plastic that are evidence of either the molding process or of you actually cutting, the little bits of you cutting the pieces from the sprues. And so this will help you remove and clean up all those pieces. Then you need some sort of either super glue or plastic cement. I like plastic cement because, for one, it doesn't stick to your fingers in the same way super glue does. And two, chemically, what it should do, instead of super glue, which is just literally there's a layer of glue in between the two pieces that holds it together, the plastic cement actually either dissolves or somehow forces the two plastic pieces to basically deform into each other, so that instead of it being like an intermediary holding the two pieces together, it's actually just forms into one piece, which should be stronger. So these are the four items you need to actually build your mini. So one is the actual minis themselves, the clippers, the straight edge or the razor, and the glue. We can move on to painting. First off, obviously, what you need is a set of paint. Now, if you go to a hobby shop or a game store, you might find that there's a rack of just individual paint vials that you can purchase, or paint pots that you can purchase. That might be a bit intimidating to figure out exactly what you need just by picking out individual pieces. So what I like to do, or what I did and what I recommend other people do who are beginners, is to purchase one of these starter sets. Usually, so this one's from Army Painter, but I think most of the miniature paint shops or paint brands have their own starter set. And specifically what you're looking for, this one comes with all the primary colors, which is nice, and a bunch of others like a flesh tone. It also comes with a wash. So you definitely, even if you buy whatever you end up buying, you should find at least one wash. That's going to be really crucial to making your minis look good. And the other thing I like about this starter set is that it comes with the brush itself. And I'll talk about that right now. So the second thing you need here is at least one good brush. So this one is the one that came from the Armor Painter starter set. And what is important about a good brush is that I just messed up the bristles here a little bit by pulling it out too harshly, but the brushes from one of these sets like Army Painter is like really soft, and usually don't count this one right now, but usually they start out very pointy and fine so that you can get all those little details from the minis that you might not be able to get from, your Walmart brush or whatever. The next thing you need is at least one bad brush. So this could either be anything. If you already have a worn out brush from something else, you can use that. I went on Michael's and bought a set of 40 paintbrushes for $10. So, that worked out for me. So this is one of them. And why do you need this? Why do you need a bad brush? There are a lot of processes in miniature painting, such as dry brushing, using metallics, or just transferring the paint from the paint pot to your wet palette. That can be damaging or just otherwise cause a lot of wear to a brush. And so this like crappy synthetic brush will be better for that than having to use your good brush and wearing it out faster. So good brush, bad brush. Next thing you will need is what I alluded to, a wet palette. So you probably don't even have to buy one. You can just conjure one up from the items you have at home. So what I use for mine is, this one is currently not wet, but it has all the materials. So you need a sandwich box of some sort, a set of square paper towels to put on the bottom to hold the water, and then a piece of parchment paper. So this is the type of paper you use for baking. Make sure it's parchment paper and not wax paper. Parchment paper is semi permeable by water, and so you need the water to be able to rise up slowly from the paper towel into your paint, so that when you put the paint onto the parchment paper, it stays wet. And the nice thing about a sandwich box is that you can actually close it and keep it nice and air and watertight. And so when you're building or when you're painting your models, you can actually keep all the paints on here and close the lid, and it will actually still stay nice and wet when you get back like the next day or something to paint again. The next thing you'll need is some kind of stick. So this is just like literally a paint, those like wooden paint stirrer from Home Depot. You can grab one for free at the paint section, or they probably will also sell them for very cheap. On top of that, you will need a set of either putty or double stick tape. And these are all going to be used to help with priming. So with that, you'll also need a set of spray primer. So priming, you need to prime your paints before, or your minis before you paint, so that there's actually good adherence between the mini and the paint. So what you do is you take a stick like this, and then you take your mini. Let's assume that this one is unpainted. Stick it on here, and then with the double stick tape, in my case, and then you use your paint primer and spray it around the mini so that you get a nice even coating, and you can spray the entire unit all in on one go rather than doing them one at a time and getting your hands dirty or whatever. So there's a whole process for how to prime and how to paint and assemble and all that. This video is not going to go into detail on how to do any of those things. There are plenty of people who are way more skilled than I am, who made great videos on all those individual processes, so you can go on YouTube and check out all of those. A piece that is technically optional but pretty mandatory in my opinion, and left out of a lot of videos, is varnish. So I bought this like pretty boring varnish, brush varnish from hobby store. You should probably, if you can find it, find a spray varnish or lacquer, because it would make the process way easier. It's like priming. You can just spray the whole thing in one fell swoop. And the idea of varnish is that if you're planning on gaming at all with your minis, you should put a varnish on it to protect the paint so that it doesn't chip or get rubbed away from constant use or transport. If you're planning on just painting the minis and not playing with them whatsoever, just leaving them for display, you don't need a varnish. But if you're gaming again at all, use a varnish. I would recommend either a matte or a satin varnish. Most people, don't want to have a glossy finish on their pieces. They want to have it look a little more matte, a little more natural. So a matte varnish is what you're looking for. So that's everything that is totally like bare bones, what you need in order to start painting successfully. I'll go on to some items that I purchased that are optional, but I'm going to try out and I think they're going to be really useful. First off is these metal ball bearings. So I found that with these paints, the paints oftentimes aren't fully mixed, especially when if they're left out, if they're on the shelf for a long time, they precipitate between the different layers. And so you need to basically shake them up and drop a single ball bearing in there. And I don't know if you can hear it or not, but the ball bearing is in there just shaking around and makes it much, much easier to mix things up. So I would recommend a set of ball bearings. You don't need to buy the Army Painter ones. You can buy any brand that is smaller than the size of the vial opening, and it really will help you get a consistent paint. The next thing is for the bases. So you can just paint the bases. That's fine. But I wanted to try out like these different textures, and I'm sure online if you checked out people's miniatures, you'll see they have really awesome looking bases. And so the way that you can do that is by grabbing some sort of brush on glue and these like terrain little accessory bits. At any sort of game store or hobby shop, you should be able to find these like little fake terrain bits. And so essentially, as long as you buy one of these and you have one of these, you can just plop one into the other, and then boom, now you have a really fancy looking base. The last optional thing that I have thus far is a set of magnets and the accessories for it. So you'll find for like Games Workshop pieces and I'm sure other miniatures, they will come with many different types of loadouts that you can customize your minis with. So if you just use the bare bones equipment, so not any of the magnets and stuff I'm showing here, you can only build one loadout at a time. And if you wanted to have a unit with a different loadout, you would have to buy another set of minis. If you want to have your minis be more flexible in their loadouts and overall just be more valuable, then you can magnetize them. So you can buy these magnets here. I would recommend the look for this like either N52 or N48, which is the strength of the magnet. And then you can buy the drill bit that corresponds with the size of the magnet. And then you can look for what is called a pin vise, which is basically holds the drill bit, together with your hand. And so basically you can hand drill the models with this setup. It's a pretty popular option for people to have switchable loadouts. All right, so that was a few more pieces of equipment than I remembered, but I hope this will help you in the process of setting up and starting your miniature hobby. If I missed anything or if I got any details wrong, let me know. Otherwise, I hope this was helpful to you, and thanks for watching.